some additional light on how we can improve the betting product. One note of housekeeping, we had a late scratch with Marshall Brown, and Pat Cummings from off, we also eligible to get on this panel with Pat. Horse racing has always had a complicated relationship with some sophisticated bettors. In recent years, racing has given up quite a bit of attention for even verified advantage players, also referred to as CAWs, sharks, or professionals, who are sometimes accused of winning too much, having an unfair advantage over regular bettors, or even manipulating pari-mutuel pools. As we examine the states of pari-mutuel betting in the U.S., we need to recognize that advantaged players have been participating in the pools since the 1980s. However, the tools have greatly evolved, and some groups have invested and adopted more than others, resulting in more of these advantaged players in the pools today. To complicate matters even further than that, we have what tracks charge wagering platforms to offer their signal varies on who's betting. No matter the composition of the pools or the content pricing, when factoring in inflation, horse racing handle has fallen 57% over the last 22 years. It was once the most dominant form of legal gaming in America, and now it represents approximately 6.5 cents of every dollar bet legal sports books. 2025 marked the sixth time in the last 7 years that the handle has fallen. We just saw in the last panel, we're on that trend again this year. And the decline points to multiple factors, including consumers having more wagering opportunities than ever. Luckily for horse racing, it no longer depends on betting solely for purses. They received a lifeline, maybe starting 30 years ago, from BLT revenue, HHR. But with that lifeline and that much needed revenue for purses, which continue to go up, we can say that maybe some tracks, they abandoned or lost focus on the horse players, who were the most important part of the purses years ago. I'm going to start this off with this panel, looking about how we manage these products for all types of bettors, what changes should occur, and let's start off with you, Donna. Usually when we talk about pari-mutuel pools, it's retail versus CAW. But that composition, it's not that simple. There's a lot more people in there in different categories. Did you guys know that who these horse players are in these pari-mutuel pools? I think we got a slide.
So I think the limit between two groups is it's too narrow. If you're going to, as the previous speaker was saying, there's a lot of data points that you could look at if you're trying to find these different areas of players. And inside each of these areas, you could come up with a different bell curve just within the recreational player, all the way up to what I call the advanced technology players now. But let's start with the recreational player. When you define a recreational player as a retail player. Retail recreational players have all different types of motivation for being in that pool. Most of all, the recreational player wants to be entertained. I'm often asked, how do we protect the $2 better? Well, you're protected by giving him the best experience that you can when he comes down by your track. That's why he's there. He wants to be entertained. Then move on up this bell curve. What I call the semi-pros. The semi-pros used to be the guys that were in your director's room or were at your big dollar betting windows for betting line. They were using what I call charts and easels to do their handicapping and apply their traditional craft. I studied racing forms, whether it was magazine sheets or Jerry Brown's Silvergrass sheets. They were using other types of toolkits that were available at the time. And then continue to go up that graph, and then you kind of get into the CAW community, and that's a broad spectrum, even inside the CAW community, from the top end to the bottom end of the CAW players. as I said, each of these different categories, you could draw your own bell curve on different skill sets that each of them possess. And look, the computer's CAW player, everybody's a CAW player. Everybody that's holding one of these handheld devices, these phones of ours have more computing power than what we had on our desktops just a few years back. At the top of the bell curve, you notice I made that data point is just a little bit over the bell curve. And that's going to be a discussion as to, and these are your advanced technology players. These are the players within this bell curve of different players that were most adaptable. They were adaptable in using today's technology and technology that hasn't even come out yet to gather data. They're the ones that are using AI assistants to help them do their research, and they're using computing power to run different analytics at much faster speeds than what they could before, because they're adaptable. They are able to use these technologies and how they handicap and how they predict final pricing. And I guess we're tight on time, so we could go on and discussing this different spectrum. But those would be your four categories. And inside those four categories, they each have their own unique differences within each of the categories of what their strengths and weaknesses are.
You're right, spend an hour talking about this easily. One thing that really pops out to me on this chart and everything you read is that label of CAW. I don't like it. It makes me feel like for some people that don't know what it is, it sounds like computers run wild. You read about AI taking over and going into a pool or something like that. I like the word, what is it really? How do you use these tools? It's not computers copying and no find it.
This isn't the Terminator spending on the population and taking over mankind. It's nothing like that. All computer-assisted wagering, just by definition, they're using technology to assist them in the way that they store data, using technology in the way that to assist them in the way that they do the analytics of that data, how they organize the data, how they parse and clean raw data, and put it into a format that they can follow it, so to speak. It is something that they can make sense out of to come up with a probability line on the other end. They carry the probability line over to the open market, which is a pari-mutuel pool, and they look for inefficiencies just like the semi-pro would do at the lower level.
So there are actual people pushing buttons and they push that individual.
Some teams have bigger teams with different people who have different responsibilities to look for data. Some are processing data. They all have different functions that they're doing within their own environment of coming up with their handicap.
The rest of this conversation, you'll hear me use the word advantage player. That's the term that we use for the higher level players that are more professionals. So the question I'm going to turn to you, Pat. Are advantage players driving everyone else away, or are the wagering declines a symptom of a much bigger problem in the industry?
Yeah, I think it's more on the declines of the mass market and then elements of the effect of the advantage player are having on retail players, recreational players, and ordinary players, weekend warriors, and even in the semi-pros. Along with all the changes in society, all the increases in entertainment options, and everything that goes along with that. So the actions of select track operators to attempt to control the marketplace better and mitigate some of the effects of advantage players has, I believe, been working. And NYRA, without question, has taken the lead on this nationally. Much credit to DiLo Jr for that. And the numbers that he has recently released, they were quoted in the Racing Forum this week, indicating that retail play is up significantly at Saratoga, and CAW play has in fact come down. So it's the NYRA experience has not been replicated by other tracks, but I think the more we start to look at how do we work consistently towards a healthier, attractive product. And it's not just in what exists today under Toad, but in lots of other opportunities.
We're gonna get there.
That's the direction we need to be going.
Question. What are your thoughts on this? Are the advantage players chasing everyone away, or is there another issue in horse racing we need to solve?
So are you asking if the CAW players are chasing away the advantage players?
Yeah, are the advantage players chasing away, or is there a different issue in horse racing?
Well, I think the CAWs are trying to eat each other right now, and they're trying to push each other out so that there's only one or two left, trying to do deals to squeeze each other. Yeah, I think that this is a really complicated problem because the industry forever hasn't done anything to focus on new fans, and the ecosystem is the ecosystem. Competition is competition, but there are certain advantages that I think are difficult to overcome if you're even a semi-pro, or even if you're a new player trying to learn this game, going up against people betting billions of dollars.
Mark?
Just as a quick introduction, because I know you said I'm one of the newer ones on the panel. Mark DiLo, I run mediabets.com, which has about 4,000 to 5,000 subscribers, and of those 4,000 or 5,000 subscribers, 90% of them are retail players. I thank you very much for having me on the panel as kind of the spokesperson for the retail player, and I think everybody here is doing a fantastic job putting on. I just found it kind of funny how the retail player is being taken advantage of, and it was just kind of a funny analogy, like the retail player representative, they spelled my name wrong.
I fixed it.
You fixed it, but I think that horse racing is taking advantage and kind of overlooking the retail player by spelling their name wrong, by not giving them enough time, not enough of a spokesperson, not enough hearing them out of the complaints that they have. Mr. Kornecki was just up here, gave us an advantage of T.O. Elvis during the Breeders' Cup. That was a horse that was 30-1 morning line. It took money from the CAWs, it took money from syndicates. The Nagimi rating on that horse was faster than Forever Young. There were reasons to like that horse. And a lot of people are going to blame the CAWs. They're going to blame syndicates on that horse going from 30-1 to 5-1. That's not necessarily the case. But if we educated the retail investor, the retail player, like myself, my clients more, right now there's three things going on in horse racing. You can make share, take share, or keep share. We're making a little share of new people. We are not taking much of a share from sports gambling. And the people that you have, like myself, my father, a lot of people in this room that have been playing horses for a very, very long time, we need to educate them more, and we need to put a wrap on a lot of things that are going on in the semi-pro CAW advanced technology player. Otherwise, the recreational environment, the recreational player aren't going to last.
What do you have to say about that?
I think there's some truth to what he's saying, and but you also have to remember that the nature of the pari-mutuel pool is for everybody to be competing against each other. And the beauty of it is that any one of these checkpoints and categories of players, anybody can move from bottom to top, or from top back to bottom, depending on whether or not they're adaptable and using the toolkits that are available out there today. You could be a higher end recreational player, develop a team amongst your buddies. If you want to challenge yourself with that math puzzle and become a semi-pro and work your way all the way up to becoming a CAW player, and if you really have the desire, and I think that there are teams that are out there, there are this generation that are, some of these guys have a method, they're brilliant, they will crack the code, so to speak, on bridging that gap between the lower end players and approaching the higher end players at the ATP level. And that's a good thing, because the competition in the market, you want people to aspire to get better. You want them to be able to move from anywhere on this gap, and vice versa. Anybody at the top, these guys stop working and improving their models, they're going to fall off to the bottom end of this bell curve, and eventually they're just not going to play anymore.
So you're telling me CAW managed players don't always win.
They always, you can turn into the data and find isolated incidents where a CAW player or groups of different groups of CAW players correlate on particular combinations, and then they each of them could get the same combination in a multi like that. But that doesn't mean that they're always winning. They're winning and losing all the time.
So, going back to what I said a few moments ago about the tracks, maybe lost focus on the horse players, I'm hearing from some of you the lack of education on how the pools work and what's happening, managing players within those pools, and understanding the technology that's available at all levels of players. Anything else, guys, you want to add to that? Going pretty much quicker than I thought. Wow.
Well,
I think Joe has, because of our short amount of time, this is such a
yeah, we have all day, we could
deep
really
topic.
go into each of these categories. As I said, each of them have their own development within their own ecosystem. And if you really want to boil this down, tracks really need to, what was it called? KYCs, know your customer. Get inside their lives. And every level. If somebody's a big player, he's not necessarily a CAW or an ATP player. You could have a big player that has a lot of money that is a recreational player. He just happens to have a lot of money. But his motivation for being there is because he loves the sport.
I'll add, Michelle, that the overall need for, we shouldn't be running and hiding from this, we shouldn't not talk about it. The more exposure it gets, the more it actually has the potential to attract people to get into the space. And I thought, there's a lot of discussions about this betting coup from Sunday and Monday. British bookmakers being taken on a series of 6 American races, 3 of which were across the street, and everything related to that. And then one of the things that I think would be great is if we heard that the $300,000 middle pick 5 was hit by a CAW player. I think a bunch of people would feel better about that, as opposed to an organized effort to take some races, and who knows whatever else happened, and we'll have to wait for the regulatory reports on that. But the mass market attention is actually a really good thing. ESPN has picked up on this story. I know the New York Times is on this story right now. Getting more attention. We shouldn't run and hide from the fact that there are advanced technology players using the most sophisticated methods to participate with our sport. They're just doing it at a level that they have to, based on where our liquidity situation is.
I agree with that. I think that is the key, is the education of what's really going on out here. And we look at what's happening with the declining of pari-mutuel handle in America, but it seems at the same time, anywhere you look, that U.S. players have this just insatiable demand to bet. Since PASPA was repealed in 2018, over $600 billion have been wagered on licensed U.S. sports books in 38 states and Washington, D.C. We just recently saw the states of West Virginia, Louisiana, and Kentucky pass legislation to allow sports books to offer horse racing as a fixed odds product on a sports book. They haven't been aligned in those states. But do you all think that, we're looking at a retail player, do you think this is something that's going to be appealing to them, going on to a sports book and having a fixed odds bet on a horse race? I'll start with you, Mark.
Yeah, I lived in New Jersey. We were one of the first states, outside of Nevada, of course, to have legalized sports betting. And I was very hopeful that legalized sports betting would drive business to horse racing. And I do not see that happening.
But it's not happening because they're not on sportsbooks in New Jersey and they're not, in the same format. We can't tell at this point.
Sure, there's a whole lot of reasons, but for me personally, I've been coming to Saratoga for 30 years. 20 years ago, me and 20 of my friends rented a house on Dillon Avenue across the street from the race, and we would go to the track, and all 20 of us would throw money in and play pick 4s, pick 5s, pick 6s, daily doubles, make the game fun. We would win, we would lose, but we would enjoy doing it, and the odd fluctuations were a whole lot less. And we can blame a lot of different things on CAWs or advanced technology players. However, what's currently happening is that unless you educate the retail player and my customer and my friends, they're going to just blame CAWs every time there's massive toy action now.
When you tell people they can't win, they start believing them. That
Right,
becomes
and
an
I
excuse.
think that's a little skewed, is that you can't win. All right, it's gotten more difficult with anything with computers. I worked in the financial world in the early 2000s. I worked on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with my father. I saw stocks going from trading on pieces of paper to guys coming in with algorithms and computers and completely changing the marketplace. Same thing is happening in horse racing. But you can still make money in the market doing what you were doing in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. It's going to be more difficult. It's the same thing now in retail wagering. Christian will probably be able to tell you just as well, if not better than I can. But you need to educate the retail player because of everything that's going on here that we're talking about, which I think Pat being the real spearhead that I've learned from the most, that you're going to blame things that might not be to blame unless you start educating people a little bit more and better. And I always like to say, there needs to be change, and if there isn't change, you're going to like irrelevancy less than change. So
We all love a conspiracy theory. Yeah, what about this? Oh, no, you go.
He's done a good point in that, in comparing to the stock market, and that technology has changed that. There's we're kind of in a conundrum here with a double-edged sword. You gotta have bigger field size if you want people to be able to differentiate the different prices in the market. There's not enough to spread out there, and that's what you're seeing. Winning players are going to correlate with one another more often now because they don't have as many choices. So if you want your recreational player to have more of a chance of finding value in some of these races, they can't be 45 horse fields. You really need 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 horse fields. Then you will see the miss rate of the CAW and advanced technology players go up quite a bit. But right now, by and large across the entire country, our field size keeps dropping.
Good point, Colin. That is another symptom of if you bet it is a symptom of lower field sizes and the magic number and their styles where you're comparing mutuals, you only need at least 8, if not more.
It's as though we have more content than number of races, but we have fewer horses running.
What do you think about another form of betting horses?
We need all of it. I think the greatest sort of hurdle at this point is getting the track operators to control the bets that are offered. And in some cases, I think it's going to need a partnership with the horses associations who have contract signatory rights to move forward on as many different forms to inspire growth in the space as possible. And that's going to require taking chances. There's going to have to be risk. The very thing we're talking about is gambling, that the track operators are not gambling on their own product. They need to be. They need to be taking, just like we're very heartened to see Churchill and NYRA working together on this Thoroughbred Championship Series. That comes with risk. They are investing in their product. What happens next year may be different than what happened in 28 and 29 and 30, and maybe other divisions are coming in, and if they're listening to the signal that they're putting out, it sure sounds like that's going to be the case. That is risk-taking and trying to change the traditions. It comes with risk. We accept that. But we need to gamble on gambling. We need to start opening up to lots of other possibilities. And if we just look at our existing market and all the metrics, there has not been growth. So what we've been doing and protecting, that really hasn't been working to grow the sport. So we should be trying to open it up, and I really think the operators are central to embracing other concepts and using that to then market and say we've got something for new customers, existing customers, technology-based customers, and not just this single pari-mutuel focused space.
What I found working on legislation in those states that just passed based on, it was the horsemen who wanted to innovate. They were the ones that push these legislation through into those states. And it is refreshing to see that they're pushing it. And when you look at what is that risk, the risk is actually really low because of having their you've given your consent, the horse in the track and commission, and so if it's not working, take back the consent, stop it. So there's a stop mechanism on this, when you look at other types of uses of horse racing content. Christian, let's go to you. What do you think? Will fixed odds be something that should be offered alongside parimutuel? Do you think that will do anything for horse racing's attractiveness?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Dawn said it very well. The product is at its probably all-time low, and if you're trying to find value in a market, you need to have variance, and you need to have complexity. And there's not, when you only have 6-7 horses in a race, and you have a 20% average takeout, how are you going to beat that? You're going to have to be taking a very heavy stand against the favorite. And in this day and age, sometimes these races, you've got 3 contenders and then a bunch of leftovers. So it really puts everybody in a tough spot. If you have a lot of money, then big bank wins. But to getting to fixed odds, when I was a director of business development for Betfair for 4 years, I tried to legalize the betting exchange from 04 to 08, and it just wasn't going to happen. And back then, the pools were much better. I mean, the racing was better. It was a better value proposition, I think, at the time. And it failed mainly because of control. The industry didn't want to do that. People had an issue betting against a horse, whatever. I do believe fixed odds has a role here. You have the problem that they're seeing in the UK, where if you have fixed odds, well, what happens if you win more than 1,000 or 10,000, then you get cut off. So that's always going to be an issue for the bigger players. So I think for the smaller players that might have an issue with the odds drops, I definitely think we have to have some form of fixed odds. But again, you're asking the monopoly of the parimutuel system to share control, and then you've got all kinds of other, issues that regulatory-wise that's going to make this complicated state by state. I don't see it as an immediate fix to the problems we have. It's definitely something we should be striving for, and I think that what Kalshi's doing is dangerous to racing's model. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody just goes offshore, some 28-year-old PhD, and says, you know what, for fun, I'm gonna create my own Kalshi on horse racing and just offer it up in the US and, just have a wild ride.
We're almost that way into that lightning rod. Prediction market operator Kalshi, they've handled $93 billion in trades since launching sports contracts in 2025. Haven't offered horses yet. They are, we'll say, putting aside regulatory, putting aside responsible gaming. Let's just look at them for what they are for a moment in time. For some of these more sophisticated players, would prediction markets be attractive on horse racing?
Sure, it's just another market. But it's not going to replace the value that's in a parimutuel pool. You have to understand a prediction market has a market maker behind it. I don't know who these different market makers are behind all these different platforms. But that market maker is not going to let's take the high-end recreational player or retail player, just has a lot of money, likes to bet big. He's not going to have a $1,000 bet down early on a horse that's 5-1. Not going to give it to him. Nobody's going to take that contract because they're not going to take that risk that far out. Bookmaking and prediction markets, these binary decisions on whether a horse can get there or not, you're not going to get good value down early. If I give you a $50 bet, and I've experienced this myself playing around with the bookmakers in London, they're not going to let me have a £500 bet down early on something at 10-1. And if I open my mouth and they hear my accent, they're going to put me immediately the starting price. It happens. These guys that run these market makers or bookmakers that run these shops, they're very savvy. They don't need to know that you're right or wrong. They play the player. And I'm not going to take a risk that they're going to balance their own portfolio. They act like their own ecosystem on the parimutuel pool.
Okay. So is it good for the retail market?
I think so, and then when I was alluding to it earlier about all potential options, this of course is one of them. Just to Don's point on getting close to starting price, you may start hearing a little bit more about this if as more information comes out about this betting coups, the Fairhill 5. Of course it was 8, but that's a different story. Doesn't rhyme. It's, alliteration is not rhyming, but anyway. that's where it started price, right? So they were able to get a lot more on it, but that's a different story than that. The prediction market, Don talked about not knowing, necessarily who's on the other side of making the market, but there's some pretty good information out there that at least at one of the emerging prediction markets, not necessarily one of the two tops, but down the line a little bit, the origin of their market maker, they were very much involved in horse racing wagering in the 70s and 80s. And a lot of professionals know what that is and were involved in, I have some good friends who talk about, running up against the Philadelphia boys in the 80s and standing in line trying to get pick sixes in across the country, chasing carryovers. We had so much data, so much information, and if this is where the innovation is driving the marketplace, it will be attractive for retail customers because they are going to spend money to try to get them and bring them into the door. It's very easy to engage with. It's forward. They're partnering with media companies already. And it expands sports. It's not just sports, it's life that is essentially on the market now. And to a point that has been raised in various conferences here last year, plenty of others, there is sort of a natural federal regulatory discussion because horse racing has a tie in with, has a federal carve out. And so if all the discussions around, well, this is federally regulated and horse racing has the Interstate Horse Racing Act to protect it, maybe there is more of a natural discussion point that can be had that sort of formalizes horse racing's role in that at some point. It just seems like it's almost inevitable that it will happen.
So what I'm hearing from this conversation, and correct me if any more to add here, is that we should be looking at all types, anything on the table that potentially expand horse racing into other forms of betting options. And it leads us to believe, as you look at sports betting, you see that it's a much younger audience. Horse racing tends to skew older. I'll look at myself in the mirror. We tend to do that. And is it? We started this thing out. Is it because of these advantage players? I don't think so. I think there's something else we're missing here on attracting people to the sport of horse racing, especially in that Generation Y, which is 29 to 44. I have to look that up, and even down to Z, which is not quite that age, up to 28. Christian, I know you are very passionate about this audience, and you are too, Mark. But Christian, why don't you start off with what you think we could be doing to bring in some of that sports betting crowd beyond putting on a sports book, which we just talked about, but what can we be doing to get them in the doors here at horse racing and become fans?
That's a billion-dollar question.
If we knew the answer, we would be all doing it, but
yeah, I mean,
you're doing some of it.
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I think this is kind of a rare opportunity to have some really interesting people on a panel, and I think Don's been one of the most successful gamblers in the history of horse racing, and I think before I go into that, I think it's almost like thinking about a couple questions to Don. When you think about, first of all, the caliber of player he is, when you think of the CAWs, they're betting 300 million, some reportings 300 million plus a year.
5 billion.
What was it?
5 billion.
Okay, 5 billion maybe. So collectively, and there's can be 20 teams. So I guess, so Don, you're where do you rank in that? Are you top 2, top 3? Are you at the top of this food chain, as a player?
Some more questions here. Go ahead and answer this, Don.
It would be me isolated. I'm not even the architect of the model that I work with. There's each of them, respectively, have different groups of people that have different roles. So I don't know that there is a pecking order that we have amongst that unique group or that small group of people, but who's the largest in volume, who's the most successful as far as hit rate and handicapping. It's all different. Everybody has different skills, and some are stronger in other geographies than the U.S., and some are stronger in the U.S. than they are outside of the U.S.
Charles, again, question.
Yeah, so-
How are we getting Generation Y?
Well, I think it's almost like reverse engineering, because like to me success is based upon how someone becomes like at Dawn's level, and like I'm like curious, like how did you get to that level? Like how did you get to your situation where you're betting hundreds of millions of dollars? Because I've heard you met Brian LeBlanc, smart player, through like an ad or something. Like I'm just curious, like how do you become one of the best?
How did you start?
Well, I was born into an industry, in the horse racing, and the industry I fell in love with, and I had to leave it. Everything from working on the backstretch of tracks, I was a jockey at one point in my career, managed racing.
I know that today, but.
One of my daughters found some old jockey licenses from over 40 years ago now. But I was born into the industry, so I love the industry, so the puzzle was there. But you transcend to doing, to define success. Is it just measured by dollars? No, it's measured by creativity. You love what you're doing, and you have to. I guess it's also about finding and meeting the right people at the right time that can help advance an agenda that could get us into a position where the group was actually betting more.
I maybe the word fun. Let's sort of fun back into the equation here. Mark, bring us some fun. What are you doing with your technology, bringing players in? Talk a little bit about it.
I was going to say, I have a lot of ideas. Make the sport more fun again.
We're not making hands.
But how about we, people come to Saratoga to have fun. There's a gentleman in this room who I part on a horse with, and she's won twice this meet. And he's brought me into his ownership group, and I've brought friends and family in. And when we win, it's fun.
Okay, that's on the horse side. What about the betting side?
Well, on the betting side, it's a lot of fun when you win. I'm not sure why we don't market this sport. This is a sport.
Right.
These animals are incredible athletes. These jockeys are incredible athletes. It's a sport.
But is it a sport or is it a game?
It's
Because
a game. We need to be marketing it as a game.
Okay.
I'm not understanding why someone like Christian has a ton of success and he's marketing his brand and as a game. My subscribers, myself, my friends, winning is fun. Losing
And Tim,
is
tell us about your subscribers, just for the audience here that may not know what you do. I had to look it up before I met you. So tell me a little bit real quick about what you're doing to get these everyday horse players interested in it.
Long story short, I provide research and analysis during the summer just for Saratoga racing. I chart trips, biases, create my own figures, have people that help me create different figures. Some people ask me, how did you do last week? How were the races last week? And I had a drink with someone last night, and I said, well, there were 55 races last week. There were 9 on the inner, 13 on the melon. There were 31 dirt races. I have a bias against 8 of the dirt races. I didn't want to be on the inside on a specific day. There were 5 races on the melon. I did not want to be on the inside. Those are playbacks for me. I provide that information to my customers, and I feel that there's an advantage in that. To go along with that, when you properly educate someone in their 25, 30, 35, you'll bring them back easier if they have a better chance of winning. And I think we've gotten away from that, where I think ABR and Jockey Club do a really good job bringing in social media people and people from all aspects of the country and the world. But this is a gambling sport. This is a sport where it's a sport, as Christian like said, but I was listening to his podcast, which is fantastic. If anyone hasn't listened to it before, he has some great people on. But there was a gentleman, I forgot his name, you could probably chime in, but he said, this is a sport, again, but to get back to my original point, this is a game. A couple of years ago, I turned $96 into $32,000 off of a pick 5. FanDuel reached out to me and said, can we promote this? And they had 100,000 people, like that post. Well, that's not going to happen to me every day. That's not going to happen to every player. But if you have a process and you like the sport and you put your time in and your research in, analysis in, you find partnerships of people that you trust and like, you win, you're going to grow the sport.
Okay. And then how are we going to bring those people over here? Christian, you do a lot of fantasy football. How do we get those players over here Because you're absolutely right, you get them in the boat, you're helping them stay in the boat here, Mark, well, let's get them in, and those are the people.
Yeah, so like, you know, back to one of the best players in the game, like you kind of want to reverse engineer it. Like, that's where I was going, like, how do you get to that place, right? Okay, so there's a bit of luck, but at the same time, there's a lot of hard work. You know, there's a lot of diligence that goes into this. So for me, I'm scoring this based on how much money people are going to be betting on a regular basis. So for me, getting, no offense, like, you know, retail, you know, fans that are just betting, you know, maybe $10 a day is not really what I want to do to help the game. Like, I'm thinking this through the lens of how can I get somebody betting, you know, 20 to 100K a year, like a semi-pro, as some people call it. And I think when you think about the advantages that CAWs have right now, you know, they're betting hundreds of bets a second, literally at the last second. So I don't know if everybody understands this, but when you're a CAW, you have access to pools, and you can bet in a sophisticated manner, batch betting, and you can slam and take the average person's bet that's at 6-1 to 4-1. Okay, that's not happening in NYRA's pools, thanks to some of the stuff that throttling that O'Rourke has done. But that's a very distinct advantage. And then you have, you know, these rebates, and the rebates, I'm sure most people know, that's 20% on average, and then the CAWs are basically roughly getting 10%. So they're paying half the price. So they're paying half the price, and they're betting at the last second. Those are two very distinct advantages. So if you're asking someone like me to try and take a stab at trying to bring in young customers or new customers, you can't get away from that, right? How do I tell that story to somebody that's got Kalshi that can try and find a market that's never been exposed when they're going to have to overcome those challenges? So that's the first place I have to start with, like, before I tell you what I'm going to take, you know, my approach. And like, I don't know if the ecosystem can afford to lose the CAWs, because this is where we are, you know, and if we're going to get into this game and attract these young fans, we have to create products that are different. And so the games right now that people are playing on horse racing with win and trifectas and exactas are just too hard. It's too difficult, it's too much time, and the distractions are not there. So I'm creating a platform for people to bet from horse racing on horse races in a very small way, small pools, more wins, like very, very basic things that are being used in fantasy football, okay? I want small groups of players playing against each other for small pots. That to me is the entrance strategy, and then you can couple that with the media arm that I'm building. So I have a Price is Wrong show, so I'm going to be celebrating these guys and giving them a spotlight, because most of them are in their shadows, and then when they do win, they want to be promoted. There's a lot of tournament sites that are doing good things, so I have to look at this from a tournament strategy. If you want to bring in somebody that's a PhD, you have to get their feet wet by showing them that they can win. They can't win right now. It's just not possible, so you have to give them alternatives, and that's why having fantasy and social and badges, and you got to speak their language, because right now, like, to me, the people on the air are not speaking the language to a 25-year-old. They're just going to mute them.
It took us a little while to get there, but we got there. Thank you, Christian.
Yeah.
We go to this side of the table. Pat, why don't you chime in on this? We don't have a lot of time, but.
Sure, we need it. You know, there's been a small lean-in with AI tools from a few entities. NYRA's worked with Joe Applebaum and Wager, WAIGR. You're welcome, Joe. Yep, I saw you walking. But trying this. Christian's point is spot on. You meet customers where they are. Mark's point, exactly as tries to find, we spend 25 years pushing customers into bets that are pretty difficult to win. And yet the pari-mutuel operator and the horseman make money every time someone comes and bets back. So why do we spend so much time pushing customers to pick fives? So this is as I said earlier, gambling. And we need to start taking chances with our product, embracing new opportunities. And to the original question, Michelle, the whole panel, can they coexist? Yes. Better than they're coexisting now? Yes.
Well, we all agree on that. Don, anything more to add to this conversation?
I agree with that. There's a balance in this financial ecosystem that exists in these pools. And each track has to do its in each geography, let's say, Pennsylvania, whether you're New York, West Virginia, California, every one of these geographies are uniquely different. And it's not a one-size-fits-all in how you come up with your own guardrails, as New York has come up with the NYRA experiment. The NYRA experiment might not work in Pennsylvania, so each of these geographies, don't be lazy about it. You've got to do your own optimization exercise. You've got to find that balance within your own financial ecosystem and your own rules that works at your track and your geography. And yeah, they can all coexist with the right balance and some of the right guardrails. It's not a one-size-fits-all. None of these models that are built, when you talk about these teams, are not a one-size-fits-all.
Really, we're getting back to focusing on the future and handing down those players more and leaving them where they are. So we need to wrap up here. We're going to do one last lightning round question, and we are going to make this brief, everybody. So what is the one thing you would do to improve betting? One thing. We've got a lot of things we could talk about. Pat, I'm going to start with you. One thing.
It actually has nothing to do with betting. I would release all the shackles on data for anyone's private, non-commercial use. If you're creating products with it, that's commercial. You need an agreement. But all racing's basic information should be available in some form of API for any customer to interact with and use. I think it would be the single greatest injection to participation in horse racing in the modern era. And Steve Kornacki said it. Maybe Steve needs to be saying it more. I've been saying it for 10 years, and there's a lot of other people in this room who've been saying it and haven't been listened to. I am starting to think that the Jockey Club is changing on this a little bit. The racetrack need to change on it too. But releasing the shackles and the incredibly high cost of our data, I think it'll pay back the industry in spades.
Well, and finding third parties and to be innovative, the things that we just can't do. Let them do it. John.
I would echo back. I was going to say the same thing. It's a data-driven space. If you want more people to get involved in your industry and solve the mathematical puzzle, handicapping puzzle, the investment engine puzzle, you got to give them the data. And the entry level is just too expensive for the average player that can turn to sports that he's familiar with. And that data is available to them for free. So if you want this Zen generation to get more to get involved in the industry and try and solve this puzzle and maybe even find this bell curve between recreational to an advanced technology player, you got to give them the data. Let them play around with it. Some will actually get involved.
Why, you guys are giving me like 1990s flashbacks. I think we were talking about it then. Moving on. Mark, what would you do? What's the one thing you do right now?
There's a lot of things, but
Well, one thing.
One thing, I was at the racetrack Saturday, Whitney Day. 30,000 people were there. It was an incredible day to be at the races. People are with their coolers. People are with their computers. There's people on their phones. There's people with a program. They've been doing the same thing with the same group of people in the back stretch in the backyard for 20 years. You flash a number up on the screen and say the number 5 is 15 to 1 with 20 minutes to post. And they're not going to get 15 to 1 on that horse by the time post time happens. There are ways to show that through implied odds. There's a system that I created, I kind of do on my own. There's DRF has a system. Make it more transparent what an exacta is likely going to pay. The computer people know this.
Some days I just want clean bathrooms.
Some days that would be fine too, but give somebody like myself, give people who are, maybe the weekend better, give them the implied odds of what you're likely going to get. I would like to know exactly, have a range of what the exacta was going to pay, the trifecta was going to pay. You have people out there like Dave Portnoy, who is a big ambassador of horse racing. He's betting the 15 to 1 shot on top of the 8 to 1 shot, and he's getting back half of what he used to get because the win pool and place pool are not correlated with the exacta pool anymore. Educate people. The more you educate them, the more they're likely to come back or make new. That would be my number one suggestion.
Christian, wrap us up here.
Okay, well, sorry, Michelle. Sorry, Michelle. I'm gonna say two things.
I didn't say
And
that.
you know I'm just always contrarian. First of all, I think the industry has to work together. And when I say that, I'm talking about the CAWs. I think at this point, when you're talking, Michelle, $5 billion a year in handle, where does that money go? Like, where is $5 billion being bet and profited on? How is that money being reinvested in the game? Because the Lewises and the Mosses and everybody is putting the money back in. I don't know of, new barns. I don't know of new aftercare programs. So to me, the CAWs need to step up and they need to figure out a way to give back to this game to help market it. Because they're the only ones profiting. The tracks aren't making money. Nobody's making money. So I think it's on them. The industry needs to have a conversation about taking some of that money and setting it aside in a marketing development fund so that everybody can work together one way or the other because they have all the power. And the second thing I would do is force them to bet early. Enough is enough. They can get their rebates. Bet early. Lock it in. Lock in the liquidity. Let's not do this last minute stuff because that will set the market and that will allow the PhD guys to come in and build their models and they'll know what they're getting. And that's a big inhibitor right now.
Just quickly go.
20 seconds.
I can tell you.
Just one question. Is that going to change the paradigm? When you become a winning player?
I am a winning player.
I'm a winning player too, and we would like to find out to see if it does help.
And you're asking to have fixed odds then?
No, you're not.
No, we're not.
You
We're not.
want to take a snapshot glimpse of what effect they have on the market, and then assume that logic doesn't somehow lead into the market after you have considered that they've stopped betting.
It's more stable. What do you lose by doing this? Like, walk me through this logic. What do you lose by doing that?
I'm asking the question.
So you won't answer the question. It's fine.
I don't know if that gets you all the way there, because I'm not really inside your mind and how you're thinking this through. But I would still say that the logic is still going to have a presence in the pool. What you're really discussing is pricing. How do you want to price this?
And we can price it better if you set guardrails up earlier, 10 minutes, 15
That
minutes.
is exactly what this discussion is about. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. Every geography is going to be different. Every track's ecosystem inside these pools is going to be different.
The Reaper is here, folks.
Just when the conversation gets interesting, we have to go.
This conversation's gonna have to go
Thank you,
outside.
everyone. We'll take it into the hallway.
Yeah, it's okay.
Thank you, guys.